Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to our channel where we talk about your favorite horror movies, and mine. And today, we're going to do something different. Since it's Spooktober, I've been watching a lot of movies, a mix of the old ones and some new. And while going through them, I noticed there's a lot of differences between them, which is obvious because, as time goes on, genres evolve. Old horror will always be special to me personally, because it has a certain sort of charm and campiness that fills me with nostalgia and appreciation. The origins of horror can be traced back to ancient times, found nestled in folklore and religious traditions such as death, evil, and the afterlife. Entities such as demons, witches, ghosts, vampires, and werewolves have occupied a larger part of the collective human consciousness for a long time, and continue to do so, considering how they've become a huge part of the horror genre. While the release of the first horror movie can be credited to George Méliès, who released The Haunted Castle somewhere in the mid-1890s, the genre itself truly didn't take off until the 1900s. The early horror movies of this time were focused on literature adaptation of horror classics, such as Frankenstein, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Psycho. The 70s and 80s are known as the Golden Age, as it saw the introduction of many horror icons and classics which are beloved by fans today. Tropes, like a group of teenagers in the woods, a mysterious masked killer, and sinister cults, have all become hallmarks of the classical horror genre as we know it. But just like it is with any other genre, horror has evolved past its bounds into something new, while still preserving bits of ye olde classics. Slow cinematography to preserve an ominous pervasiveness, deep-seated mommy and daddy issues, and an unsettling sense of unease and sadness are but some of the ingredients of this modern version of horror. And in today's video, we're going to look into some of them. There were a lot, but after reviewing my notes, there are 7 that I am going to talk about in this video. Number 1. The P in parents stands for problem. Ever heard the famous poem by Philip Larkin that goes, "They fuck you up, your mom and dad. They may not mean to, but they do. They fill you with the faults they had, and add some extra just for you." Generational trauma and dysfunctional families are now taking the center stage in horror productions. A trauma that goes beyond just the physical and psychological and speaks to deeper issues. Although no one has yet to dethrone Margaret White and Jack Torrance as the worst horror movie parents yet, it's interesting how trauma is explored through the lens of horror. Take Hereditary, 2018, Ari Aster's feature-length directorial debut, which explores the themes of loss and how we as humans tend to grieve. The pivotal figure, Annie, is already dealing with the loss of her mother, someone she had a troubled relationship with. On top of that, the sudden and gruesome death of her daughter tips her off the edge. The events that follow are something that are still talked about years later. Another example is The Witch, 2015, which explores how the family deals with exile from the community and the loss of a child, their grief and fears further exacerbated by the wilderness setting. In both movies, you can see the families suffering as a result of the very people who are supposed to protect them. Other such movies which explore the parents as the primary source of their family's suffering are Pearl, 2022, Midsommar, 2019, Smile, 2022, and Us, 2019. Number 2. Young women versus white men. Although the statement, "the white man is a source of evil," is a generalization that can be considered an oversimplification of complex social issues, in horror movies, it's not. These white men are a menace, especially to the young women. Women are more often than not the primary protagonists of horror movies. Despite the gratuitous violence and victimization of women, the horror genre is surprisingly feminist, far more so than other genres. Examples include Scream, 1996, Jennifer's Body, 2009, Suspiria, 1977, Ready or Not, 2019, to name a few. Male directors are also contributing to this trend. Oz Perkins transforms the fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel into a feminist story about a strong-willed girl choosing her path. In these films, the primary fear for most female characters is often the average white man. He may not even do anything, just stand there and stare, as in Chloe Okuno's Watcher, 2022, or attempt to break into a house, as in Alex Garland's Men, 2022. In Natasha Kermani's Lucky, 2020, the protagonist is attacked nightly by a villain, highlighting how a woman's perception of a silent stalker can trigger deep psychological trauma. Number 3. Reminiscing for retro. Nostalgia is a liar. It makes us long for the old and good times by making us forget how bad some of them were. Old horror subgenres were once iconic because they introduced something new at the time. Like Wes Craven's Scream, which proved that you could have a laugh, enjoy meta-commentary on the tropiness of horror, and scream in shock over watching someone get stabbed to death, all within the span of 5 minutes. Many directors are experimenting by remixing old concepts by adding a new touch. Take, for example, David Robert Mitchell's It Follows, 2014, where a girl's innocent sexual encounter experience turns into something more sinister and haunting. The movie reminds you of John Carpenter's Halloween with its background music, and Louis J. Gassner's Reefer Madness with its melodramatic retelling of innocent teens getting lured into drug use. Another popular example is the work of T. West, known for his X trilogy, which comprises the following films: X 2022, Pearl 2022, and Maxine 2024. The first film was an homage to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. P.S. Don't forget the Terrifier series as well. The vintage cinematography and special effects pay homage to the old-school grindhouse-style movies. We've also done a few videos on Damien Leone's brainchild, so if you're interested, go check them out. Number 4. Blogs, vlogs, and streams. The mockumentary format has been around since the 1930s. It truly shot to fame with The Curse of the Blair Witch, which laid out the backstory for the popular Blair Witch Project, 1999. It would be remiss of me not to mention Paranormal Activity and Grave Encounters. There is just something about watching something through the lens of someone, the rawness of the footage, absent of any editing and tricks. I would also like to mention found footage here as well, for those are the old versions of modern-day streaming. Nothing sends shivers down your back more than learning your horror movie was based on a true story, or that it was something unearthed from the physical video archives, shot by a real person at some point in time. A modern take on this is Spree, which focuses on the story of a taxi driver desperate for his claim to fame, and resorts to live streaming his murders to the rest of the world. Please don't be put off by the split-screen format and the constant barrage of comments and emojis on the screen, because that is what makes it surreal. Also, Joe Keery is in it. How can you not check it out? Number 5. Slow burn. If you're a fan of being immersed inch by excruciating inch, then modern horror has you covered there too. Slow burn horror films have slowly been on the rise, and in the past decade, we've been blessed with a myriad of examples that linger on our psyches long after we're done watching them. There's The Invitation, 2015, where a man is invited to dinner by his ex and her new beau, suspecting there's an ulterior motive behind this invitation. Then you have Lanthimos' Killing of a Sacred Deer, 2017, an absurdist psychological horror where a surgeon is forced to make an unthinkable decision that will alter the lives of his family forever. Then you have the atmospheric setting of The Lighthouse, 2019, which explores the lives of two men on a remote island and their struggle to maintain their sanity in the face of it. Slow burn films might feel like a drag to some, but sometimes the payoff is more than worth it. Number 6. A24. A24 has become a well-known name in the film distribution that is associated with projects such as Everything Everywhere All at Once, Talk to Me, Midsommar, Lady Bird, Moonlight, as well as popular series like HBO's Euphoria and Netflix's Beef. While A24 has been lauded for its unique blending of genres and atmospheric media, it has also been criticized for being repetitive. If you've seen one A24 movie, you've seen them all. The same could be said of Blumhouse as well. While they have produced some of the most popular horror franchises of our time, Paranormal Activity, Purge, Insidious, and put out acclaimed films like Split and Creep, they too have been accused of being formulaic and predictable. I'll give them a pass though, as they made Happy Death Day one of my favorite horror comedy films of the recent decade. Number 7. The Silence Game. What makes a horror film scarier than it already is? The absolute absence of sound. Even in our real lives, we're used to some sort of sound feedback in the background. Movie makers cleverly utilize this in horror films. The Quiet Place and Bird Box are the more popular dishes with this ingredient, so much so that they've left an indelible impression on the viewers. But I'd also like to mention other movies that you should definitely watch if you haven't already. There's Don't Breathe, 2016, where a bunch of teenagers break into a blind veteran's house to rob him, only to find themselves caught up in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The plot twist is actually sickening. Then you have Hush, 2016, which was a very stressful experience for me personally. The way the killer was practically shadowing the unaware deaf woman in her own house had me biting my nails. Another old one I'd like to mention is The Stranger, 2008. There was just something about the creepy, mask-wearing strangers conducting a home invasion which had no motive that just increased the horrifying factor for me personally. It's like how Art the Clown is, happily wreaking carnage just because he can, and you're just staring at it, like you would a train wreck. And there you have it, folks, the ingredients of modern horror. Media has always lent itself to experimentation, and horror movies are no different. While you may argue that modern horror films prioritize concepts over characterization, which doesn't allow us to establish any relatability with the characters, you cannot deny the mind-boggling creativity of popular names such as Ari Aster, Jordan Peele, the Eggers brothers, and Mike Flanagan. There's still some interesting titles in the works, such as Black Cab, Heretic, Horror in the High Desert, and Nosferatu. I will, of course, be reviewing some of these, the last one especially, but do let me know if there's anything you want me to do in particular. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching this to the end, and please continue to like, comment, and subscribe to my work. Until next time,